Many left comments on my latest video titled The Bully, completely missing the point of the video, and have taken the conversation of the topic into the exact opposite direction that I'd hoped for. If you haven't seen it yet, it's linked below. So give it a watch, browse the comments beneath it, and come back here. One of the dangers of implementing subtlety or stories to drive home a message, especially on the internet, is that people are going to miss your point. Now, whether that's due to incompetence on the listener's part, a failure to clearly communicate on the writer's part, or just genuine, honest, mutual misunderstanding, it's frustrating. So this video is to just talk about my point directly, spelling everything out clearly, meaning that about a third of the commenting audience won't even listen past the first few things I say before they start rage typing their way into obnoxious, ill-informed arguments anyway. Well, here we go. Some people appear to be under the impression that the point of my video was to give an excuse for the behavior of all bullies everywhere and to blame the victims of bullying, thereby absolving all guilt and responsibility from the bullies themselves. Some thought I was saying that all bullies were exactly like the character Kyle and that no bullies actually exhibited unprovoked harassment. Those things are quite far from the actual point. As what usually happens when I touch on this subject was that tons of people in the comment section have to leave their personal little anecdotes about how horribly they were bullied in a long, sad series of one-upsmanship for just how bad they had it and how nobody could possibly understand. As painful as it is to read all those little professions, they bring me to the very point that so many seem to be missing. While so very many people have personal stories about how many bullies they grew up around, myself included, very few to zero people ever remember or care to admit being the bully. Don't you think that's a tad bit strange considering the volume of bullies we hear about? Now, I think it's human nature to not realize how limited a scope we have for what actually happens to us and what's going on around us objectively, especially in our youth. Our memory is constantly clouded, and the farther back that we attempt to recall, the murkier things become. There's a reason eyewitness testimony is placed amongst the least reliable forms of evidence, especially when it comes from the underdeveloped minds of children or even adolescents. It is those distorted memories that we call upon to tell us what sort of kids we were like and what those around us were like. The odds are that the people who raised you and those who supervised you when your guardians weren't around have a more accurate, albeit still far from perfect memory of what your childhood was like than you do. And most people seem to be under the impression that they were reasonably innocent kids doing their best to get by when they were in school, and it was the cruel, malicious bullies who always sought them out and tortured them. Now, there's a black and white good-evil association drawn to these character distinctions that would grant superhero comics awards for subtlety by comparison. Just like most adults who you consider to be obnoxious assholes don't consider themselves to be obnoxious assholes, most kids who exhibit bully behavior don't consider themselves these evil bullies. And if we were to simply remove every bully from school permanently so that all the good little kids can learn without disruption, as some comments have suggested, the schools would be empty by the 9th grade. Kids are people, and people are very different from one another in terms of personality, humor, tolerance, and maturity at any given point in life. I once set a folder on a high school junior's desk, only to find out later that he interpreted me as having thrown it on his desk as an act of disrespect because I didn't directly hand it to him. Some kids' efforts to compliment or help other kids are perceived as insulting or condescending. Some kids enjoy horseplay or deliberately pick on people as a means of tribal initiation to engage with them or get along with them, while others consider that same treatment a form of attack. Kids of all ages are learning what behavior is acceptable and what is not in social settings. Behavior is learned from that which is modeled, and so it's not uncommon for cliques of like-minded students to associate with each other, form hierarchies, and ostracize outsiders. If everyone in a social circle does it, it seems more natural, even if for an observant adult or victim, it's considered a clear moral wrong. So, the point of the previous video isn't to say that all bullies are just misunderstood strong silent types with home problems who get pushed too far, or even that those who do should be absolved of all guilt for their bully behavior. Real life isn't a comic book, and people aren't simply either heroes or villains at any age, despite how much easier it is for us to think of them that way. We all shift from one end of that spectrum to the other various times toward various people from our births to our deaths, especially in our earliest years. Very seldom are we considerate enough to seek out the good in those who seem wicked or to be cognizant of the manifesting cruelty in ourselves. If you think that nobody in your entire life has ever considered you a cold-hearted bully or an offensive asshole, then you're probably wrong. If you think that everybody who's ever mistreated you has done so purely out of sadistic malice and only needed to be expelled from school or thrown in jail to learn his or her lesson, you're probably wrong about that too. If you realize that the lines between bully and victim are a blurry mess with frequent transitions, and that viewing things from an empathetic perspective can help us understand one another and get along much better, then you probably got the point of the last video. Unfortunately, if you grasped that already, my video probably wasn't very enlightening, so maybe it's all my fault after all. Fuck.